They close the motorway off. I'm going up the hard shoulder. I get there and the air ambulance is there. They're cutting around the vehicle, getting her into the back of the ambulance. And I end up going to my old hospital.
No.
The old trauma centre where I used to work with my mum in the back of the ambulance. And I've got all my old colleagues coming down because they've seen I've been elected to congratulate me and then thinking, what the hell are you doing here?
Welcome back to the Veterans in Politics podcast. I'm your host, Jonny Ball, and I've served on the front line of military operations, as well as a very different front line of UK politics. Veterans in Politics is a set of interviews designed to inspire the next generation to stand up and serve again. And if this is your first time here, a very warm welcome. You've got a whole heap of episodes to catch up on. And an easy thing for everyone to do is to simply like, share and subscribe to the show. And why not tell a friend? And if you want, in the show notes, you'll see other ways in which you can support us by keeping this show independent. Or if you want to go even a little bit further, why not sponsor an episode or sponsor a whole season too? This week's guest is a good pal of mine, Dr. Neil Shastri Hurst MP. Now, Neil is a previous guest of the podcast, and when we last interviewed him, it was under very different circumstances. This episode covers a lot of ground, and I would say the one word that crops up is resilience. Political resilience, personal resilience too, and it is inspiring. Towards the end of the podcast, we do touch on the very difficult, sensitive and tragic subject of suicide. And if you do need any help, then do look up the details we supply in the show notes, or if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll be able to see it there too. In the meantime, do sit back wherever you are, out on the dog walk, or maybe you're even doing the washing up, or you're on a car journey. Enjoy the show. And for now, it's time for us to meet Neil. We are in the constituency office of Dr. Neil Shastri Hurst MP, an old friend. Now, for viewers of this podcast and listeners, you might remember Neil's story from a very, very earlier season when Neil was not a Member of Parliament and we were reflecting on essentially what could be perceived to be political failure, weren't we, Neil?
Yeah, and how time changed. I mean, then I was in my my lounge. We were having a chat. I'd just lost the by-election. It was pouring down with rain. It was the middle of winter. Now we've got the sun shining outside. I'm a Member of Parliament for a fantastic constituency, and it's delighted to come back on this show.
Well, thanks for inviting me to your office, mate. I really appreciate it. And I think today we do want to talk about what it's like to bounce back from that kind of failure and the resilience, some of the stuff that we know from the armed forces community. We talk about resilience a lot and we talk about it in industry and society, but that must have taken a hell of a lot of resilience to have bounced back from that experience. And what did you learn from that experience that you took forward to successfully campaigning and winning a parliamentary seat?
It's a really interesting question, and I think we touched on it last time about, you know, how you can't give up, and it's something that's sort of innate in the psyche of those who have served, because you can't just say, look, I've had a bad day at the office, I'm going to pack up and I'm going to go home. You've got to keep on trudging through. But actually, the whole term of resilience can be slightly abstract at times, and it's really about an element of character, isn't it? And it's about knowing that if you give up, those around you will be let down, and you've got to carry on going for that. Look, I'm not going to deny losing a 20,000+ majority seat in the national glare is not a somewhat challenging experience. And at that stage, my son had just been born. He was 3 weeks old when I got selected.
So how old is he now?
He's 4.5. So
wow.
He's moved forward rapidly. But I was incredibly lucky. I had a really loving family around me. I still do, who were able to pick me up. I had some really good mates who took the mick out of me. And that's actually the best levelling thing. You know, you can go home and you can feel sorry for yourself, or you can go down the pub with your mates, or go for a run, or catch up with them in whatever way you want, and have that conversation. They rib you a bit, they take the mick, but you know that they're actually there when you need them. But fundamentally, it's about standing up for what you believe in. And if I was going to let that minor inconvenience set me back, then I'm not the bloke that I thought I was. And so when the opportunity came to run again, absolutely wanted to go for it. And remarkably, for a general election that was pretty tough last round across the board, I was able to have a reference point and say, do you know what? It's tough, but it wasn't that bad.
Yeah, so going from a national by-election in the public glare, I mean, you got doorstepped by Michael Crick. Since then, I've interviewed Michael Crick, funny enough, and he's actually a bit of a cuddly bear actually when you meet him as a person outside of.
I really like Michael. He was doing his job, but he did it very well.
Yeah. So but again, what you learned from that experience, you spoke about character, fighting a by-election, your military experience, and you've got such from being a medic, essentially working and a surgeon, to being in the law as well. All of those that mix, that cocktail of skills that you've had, that lived experience of the by-election, and then character. How does that show up when you're stood in front of a group of people? And let's face it, the Conservatives, particularly at that time and arguably now, on the back foot. How do you stand in front of them, and how do you inspire that group of people to go out there, knock on doors, deliver leaflets in your name?
Look, it was tough. I think we're in a very different position now to where we were back in July 24. But July 24 was really difficult. We'd just come off the back of local elections. Locally here, we'd lost a fantastic mayor in Andy Street by a wafer-thin margin. And people had thought there wasn't going to be an election for another 6 months at least. And all of a sudden, it's thrust upon them. They're tired and exhausted already. And we've not got the greatest landscape in terms of having that conversation on the doorstep. And I think it is about setting a positive message. There may be challenges that are going on nationally, but it's telling people what you're going to do locally. It's about getting your team behind you to understand that we've got a shared objective, that we want to deliver for our residents here, in my case in the constituency of Solihull West and Shirley, and make sure it's a better place to live. And I'm a great believer in positive campaigning. I think if you start off from a negative standpoint, you're just going to demoralise people. You've got to set out a vision of how we can make this country better. At the same time, not trashing what we already have. I think there's a real danger we talk Britain down. We've got to recognise the great strengths of our country, but also there are ways that we can make it even better.
And there'd be many temptations to negatively campaign, I'm sure. I'm sure there are even people in your team who would be advising you, saying, no, we need to respond to this thing. How do you stay true to those beliefs? How do you stay true to those values and say, no, and that leadership moment, this is what I believe, this is the way we will go on that positive message?
Well, I've always been of the view you play the ball, not the man or the woman. I think that's how we should do it in politics. I remember growing up, my dad said, never point your finger at someone else because there's three fingers pointing back at you. And it's very true. It's really easy in politics to take the cheap, easy, quick win of calling for somebody's head here and there. What's more important is to set out what you can do and what we can do as a Conservative team in terms of delivering for this country and for the local area. But I just think it's about where you have your reference point. And if your reference point, as I was brought up, and the way I'm bringing up my own child, is that you act with decency and integrity. And part of that is you make the argument, you make the ideological argument, you do that in the most persuasive way as you can. But that doesn't require you to trash somebody else at the same time. You can disagree agreeably. I think we've lost the art of doing so.
I agree. And we spoke extensively about your family in the last episode and that anchor, including your parents as well. And now you are a parent in a really high profile, stressful job. How is family anchoring you in this new role?
It's incredibly important. If I didn't have them around, I don't think I would be able to do the job I'm doing. Now, I'm not saying that you've got to have a child and a spouse to do what we do. There's lots of people who don't, and they do it incredibly well. But I know for me personally, they're always my reference point. And going back and spending time with them is incredibly important because it levels you. And this job is stressful. There are ups and downs of it, but I also know that there's something about going home and being par and kicking a football around in the back garden or failing at our vegetable patch, and having that time just to reset with my son.
And humbling.
It's really humbling, isn't it? Because he tells me, "Pa, you're not concentrating at the moment. You need to focus on what you're doing, which means you need to spend more time with me." And that is incredibly humbling. Yeah,
while your phone's pinging, you've got your team ringing you. There's that crisis. You might have the whips. all these competing priorities, but that anchoring of family and being present, really, really important. So we've spoken about the local element, we've spoken about what you learned, and we've spoken about family, how important that is. But you finally get elected, you turn up in Parliament, the party looks a lot smaller, a new Labour government, that first day.
Yeah, so I'm going to rewind a little bit. So we've got night of the count. I think I got announced about 4 o'clock in the morning. We went home.
And what was that majority?
It was 4,620.
A number they'll be
etched on my mind. It's a bit like remembering your service ID number, isn't it? And we went home. My mum had been looking after our son overnight. I dropped my son off at nursery. My mum went to her house. My wife went to bed. I then get a phone call, and it's my mum's had a massive accident on the motorway.
No.
Birds flown into her windscreen. She's swerved, gone into the ditch at 70 miles an hour.
No.
So I'm waking my wife up. I'm getting in the car. I'm driving up the motorway. I'm saying, they better not move her. I know what I'm doing. My wife's calmly reminding me that I'm no longer
medic mode.
I'm no longer a doctor. I might have my registration, but I no longer have a license to practice, and there are better people to do this. They close the motorway off. I'm going up the hard shoulder. I get there, and the air ambulance is there. They're cutting her out the vehicle, getting her into the back of the ambulance, and I end up going to my old hospital.
No.
The old trauma centre where I used to work, with my mum in the back of the ambulance. And I've got all my old colleagues coming down because they've seen I've been elected to congratulate me, and then thinking, what the hell are you doing here? So it's also my wife's 40th birthday. So we've got that over the weekend. And then I go down to Westminster on the Monday. So I've got all these things going on, and you're thrown into this most wonderful but bizarre institution where you turn up at 7 o'clock on the Monday morning you're allocated somebody to show you around, you're given your laptop, you open it up, there's already 400 emails on it, you haven't got a team, you don't have an office, you can't quite work out how you get from point A to point B without leaving a tray of crumbs behind you, and you're trying to navigate your way around this whole new world of I've got to get sworn in, and I've got to do this, and I've got to do that. But it's fantastic. Oh, and we're down to 121 MPs at that point in time. So
there's no hiding.
There's no hiding. You've got a brilliant cohort of new MPs from our side who came in 2024, who are elated to have got elected. But you're joining a group who have also seen so many of their friends and colleagues lose their seats and have gone through a really battering election campaign. And that was a really crucial few weeks, days and weeks. And I think how we came together at that point was so important as a party. And we were really unified those days of the 5 families. It was pretty clear, there weren't enough of us for 5 families, but more importantly, there wasn't an appetite for division. And we knew that if we wanted to survive as a Conservative party, we had to pull together. And I think that was a really important moment of resilience as an organisation, but also camaraderie and that sense of bonding amongst us.
And you explain that tension between those that are mourning their colleagues that have been around for a bit and this excited cohort as well. And that you must have been alive to that and be sensitive to that. I completely get that. And just winding you back again, all of that you had to process from seeing your mum, your wife's birthday, going back to your old work, and they're like, what are you doing here but happy? Oh, no, you're an MP in your old work. How did you sort of just pause, process, and deal with all of that, or have you? How did you move on?
I don't think you do at the time, because it's just a conveyor belt, isn't it? You're getting through things. I wanted to make sure Mum was all right. I wanted to make sure my wife's birthday party went okay. Whilst balancing that, I had to phone up and
school run,
all of those sort of things. And then I think you do have a moment where all of a sudden, just the world quietens down a bit. And it could just be that 10-minute walk into work in the morning, and you just reflect on things. I get in at around 6:45, 7 o'clock every morning. I have my little routine. I walk in and I go through Westminster Hall. I look at that brilliant stained glass window at the far end, And that's my moment every day that I think, imagine the people who have walked here before me.
Yeah.
I am just a speck in the history of this building, but what a privilege it is to be here. And how lucky I am for however long I'm returned to that place to represent my residents and my constituents, and to be part of this national conversation.
So it's another humbling moment, from family, your little boy, your mum, this stained glass window, and I think you're referring to the recording angel at the end of Westminster Hall.
Yeah.
And for those that might not be aware, on there are the names of the members of Parliament, peers, and their sons who were killed in the Great War and the Second World War, I believe, and including the father of Ian Fleming, the author of James Bond. His father is on that wall, as well as the staff from the parliamentary estate who died in the wars. And of course, most recently, we lost in the Intelligence Corps Lance Corporal Ollie Thomas, who worked for a Liberal Democrat Member of Parliament. Most recently, and I'm not sure if his name is on the recording angel, but perhaps it should be. It really should. But those humbling moments are really important. So we've now moved on, bedded into Parliament. You've got the new batch of MPs, but there's also a new batch of veterans. Yeah. And now, naturally, this is something from our first conversation you would have picked up from where we met at fringe events, at party conference, how I've been evangelising the value of veterans to stand up and serve again. And I'm so proud of you, because you are why I've worked so tirelessly on this campaign and why I do this podcast.
Well, you've done a brilliant job, Johnny. You've done a brilliant job. Because actually, if you look at the House, it's not just one party, it is across the House. In the governing party, in the Liberal Democrats, in the Conservative Party, and others who have got those from the veterans community. And that is so important because, yes, we may have different political views on certain issues, but we have a common thread that binds us together.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And this new cohort of veterans, so we've got, I think, 40, and as you've rightly pointed out, it's more balanced. In the last parliament it wasn't. We're seeing more from the recent conflict generation, both from Afghanistan, Iraq, Bosnia. These veterans from more recent conflicts now representing younger, in the 30s and 40s, and that's really refreshing. How's that community of the veteran MPs rubbing up in Parliament when you bump into each other either in the corridors or the canteen? And as you say, you might be from different political tribes, but you started and still are part of the Armed Forces tribe too. What's that like when you bump up against those colleagues?
I think it's really interesting. There's a clear mutual respect. There's also a shared set of values. That sense that comes through you from a military career, or the fact that you're attracted to a military career because you have those innate values anyway. And so I think it's a well-worn phrase, but we've got more in common than we have apart. There will always be the ding-dong of the political debate. There will always be tensions that arise. But I think generally when it comes to matters of foreign affairs or defence, there is a different tone. And you can tell that in the House, in debates and in questions. Everybody has a shared national interest. We may have a slightly different view of how we achieve that and what levers should be pulled, but there's a mutual respect of across the House of the experiences that are brought together.
And to be fair to some of the Labour veterans on the select committees, people like Calvin Bailey, people like Fred Thomas, they've not been shy in coming forward with some of their challenge. I guess that's the job of the select committee, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But they are standing up to that challenge. And there are members of the government benches who are calling out the lack of progress on things like the DIP.
That's the Defence Investment Plan.
We love a TLA.
Love a TLA.
Love a TLA. But, the lack of movement towards getting GDP up to 2.5%, 3%, all of those sort of things, making sure we've got readiness in terms of our defence. And I think there is a general feeling amongst the military community or the veteran community in Parliament. That's not a party political point. That is a much wider point that we've got to be taking defence much more seriously.
And its job's right here in the West Midlands, because the West Midlands is a powerhouse for manufacturing,
absolutely,
engineering. So this matters on a local front too.
Yeah, and it's not just the big primes, but it's also the SMEs who are part of that supply chain. We've got a fantastic company in my constituency called Thor Hammer, who you may never have heard of.
Great name.
Great name. They do soft hammers, but they have been supplying the military for years because, of course, when you're tinkering with your tanks and you don't want to give off your position, having a soft hammer is the perfect thing. They were out there in the Second World War, so it's those little organisations that you may not have heard of, but are such an important part of our wider economy.
Well, if they can make some slippers for my little girl that are soft slippers to stop her stomping around and upstairs because she makes a racket, I will invest. I'll be the Dragon's Den investor on that one. And keeping it local, something that's close to my heart is the Invictus Games.
Brilliant, isn't it? It's coming to the patch.
It's coming here. Yeah, it's coming here to the West Midlands. And even though people say it's Birmingham, it's actually technically Solihull.
It is, and I'm claiming it. So it's technically in my friend and neighbouring MP Saki Bhatti's constituency of Meriden and Solihull East, because it's over at the NEC. But I am claiming it. For a couple of reasons. We've got the brilliant Royal Star and Garter in my constituency, so one of the military care homes, which I'm always delighted to go and visit because they are such a great bunch, and it doesn't feel like you're walking into a retirement home, it feels like you're walking back into a mess. But perhaps more pertinently, there are guys and girls who are competing in the Invictus Games that I had the privilege of looking after when I worked at the QE in Birmingham. And so seeing them through their journey from injury to recovery and now to excelling in their sporting endeavours, I couldn't be prouder.
I think you're going to have to prepare yourself for that moment. Maybe not over-prepare, but just be conscious that when you are at the Games next year and you meet those people and people from other nations that benefited from the life-saving, limb-saving surgeries and treatments that you've been involved in your previous life, that's going to be quite the moment for you as you meet these people. I can only, from past experience as a competitor in the Invictus Games, that connectivity you have with someone from another nation, from shared experience, be it operational or just going through some form of trauma. I guess preparing, don't want to over-prepare, but just be conscious how you might react to that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be moving, but I think the overwhelming sense is going to be immense pride that, it's the demonstration of resilience. You can't get any more resilient than that. These are individuals who have lost their limbs, who have not felt sorry for themselves. They've gone back out there and they've got cracking at it and done what we expect from our military, which is to show grit and resolve, and they've gone out to be the best that they can.
Hey, and if it wasn't for people like you and for your teams, I had all of my surgeries done in Walsgrave Hospital down the road in Coventry, and I know that my surgeon, Mr. David Wallace, had done a whole heap of surgeries on guys and girls back from Iraq and Afghanistan, and a bit like the Second World War with the Guinea Pig Club and the burns treatments and the advances in science that enabled future generations to be able to improve their life outcomes as a result of conflict. I've definitely benefited. Without Afghanistan and Iraq, I would be an amputee, hands down. And I'm really grateful for what you and your community and your previous life have done. So I think you're right. And it's been a big part of the narrative and the focus of why it should be in the West Midlands, is because I always say this is the soul of recovery here in this part of the world. In the Midlands, where I live, just near Loughborough, we of course have DMRC Stamford Hall.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant place.
That connectivity to both treatment and care, this is the perfect place to be. So we're really excited. I'm really excited for you personally that you've got this opportunity.
I think you can tell I'm pretty excited too.
Now, we know it's important for us, but why do you think it's important for a big part of it is about the legacy and a bit about future generations? What are the kinds of things and the benefits that young people and communities here in the West Midlands will see? Because that was always my challenge in Germany, is that people home couldn't see it because the TV coverage was so poor. But people are going to feel that magic. But what do you think the legacy will be for this part of the world, knowing that the Games is coming to the NEC?
Yeah, so I mean, on the TV element, I think you're right. We do need to make sure that more people can see it because it's such an important advocacy opportunity. I think locally, we talked at the beginning about positivity, and I'm a great believer that you campaign positively. But it would be wrong not to acknowledge that perhaps the fabric of society is being stretched a bit at the moment, and there are more tensions. I think having a group of young people who can see not only the sacrifice of service, but the benefits of service is incredibly important, because when I look at the competitors to Invictus, I don't see someone who has just lost a limb. I look at somebody who shows leadership, who shows that sense of being a team player, who has resolve, who has grit, who has dedication. And I think teaching our young people that those skills are so critically important is really important, because that's how we build up our communities, and that's how we build up a better society.
I think that's the bit that excites me the most, if I'm honest. The Games is wonderful. Like I said, from personal experience, my family, we had a great time, and I speak to someone from Invictus pretty much every day. But actually, it's the impact it's going to have, the ability for my family to come and watch it, my friends to come and watch it, for communities to feel part of it, and the legacy, a bit like 2012, how it changed perceptions around disabilities. It's going to give us so much hope when we need it right now in our society, and that's what excites me the most.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't wait to bring my son.
Oh, that's a brilliant thing. And my little girl, to bring her, she was 3.5 when she went to Germany, but now she's going to be having a games here at home, extra special. And back in Westminster, obviously we're currently at time of recording, back in the constituency, having a bit of a break.
We're campaigning hard.
Well, you're about to face local elections, so you're going to be out continuing to knock on doors and making the case here in the constituency. But when you return to Westminster, what's next? What are you currently working on, campaigning? What's the work beyond the constituency stuff, which we're alive to, but perhaps more widely, what's keeping you busy in Westminster?
So lots of things I'm doing at the moment. So I'm part of the Justice Select Committee. I'm really holding this government's feet to the fire over jury trials. I think that's a massive misstep. It's a watering down of our constitution, but also it's that removal of the public's involvement in law. So I'm going to carry on that fight, because that one is not over yet.
And that leads, of course, into your legal background, because as well as being from the medical profession, you also have a legal background as well. So
Jack of all trades, master of none, as I keep saying. So I was a barrister for 7 years or so before I came into Parliament. The other thing I do, so each week, and I'll do a gratuitous plug here, I publish on LinkedIn my resilience report, and that's looking at broader resilience within society, and that may be to do with national security. We look at economic security, we look at what we've just touched on in terms of the fabric of society, and I think that's something I really want to keep pushing about, how we become much more resilient as a nation. And you look at countries such as Norway, for example, it's much more ingrained in their national psyche about their responsibility if there was a crisis, or whether there was geographically, because of their close proximity to Russia, if there was an invasion, for example. I think we need to be much more attuned to that within society. So that's something I'm working on, doing a lot around Stop the Bleed training, so working with former colleagues, both from the military and the civilian sector, in terms of upskilling young people to ensure that they have those life-saving skills. So we've just had Parliament prorogue, and my 10-minute rule bill has come down with that, but that was to introduce life-saving skills to the national curriculum. So that's something I want to carry on bringing forwards. And in fact, on Wednesday just gone, 29th of April, it was the Stop the Bleed Day. We trained over 1,000 pupils at one of the local schools in those skills. And I'm doing some work about suicide prevention, because very sadly, one of my team took their own life in November of last year. And we, as a team, are very keen to do more about raising the issues of suicide prevention.
Well, and we'll put in some details in the show notes about, for anyone that needs information, knowledge around that, something close to my heart too. Having campaigned on and continuing to campaign on men's mental health and mental health more widely. And thank you for sharing that. And we will share advice and details in the show notes for anyone that wants to find out more about that. And of course, our DMs are always open on that. Neil, it's been a fantastic canter. I'm so pleased for you, and I use that word proud. I'm really proud of you, both as a veteran and as a friend. Go forth. It's great to see you. It's definitely been a different conversation from the first time we spoke.
Yeah, pretty different age.
It's pretty different. I mean, remarkable. I mean, what stays with me, resilience sticks with me. That the family link's really important. I think that's again what our love of our families is what really bonds us, as well as our service. And don't forget, stand up and serve again, because we've just seen what can be done.
Always a pleasure, Johnny. Thanks so much.
Thank you.